برسانيا، قولي برسانيا. أخيرا يا برسانيا، أخيرا.
هاي سوري.
أخبارك؟
تمام، انتوا عاملين ايه؟
الحمد لله يا حبيبتي.
بدأتوا؟
اوكي. يا ريت اللي عنده أسئلة يبعتها لتينا، يبعتها ليا أو لميري، نبعتها على طول لهبة، ماشي؟ أو عايزين تكتبوها على الشات على طول يبقى أحسن، يعني براحتكم. اللي مش عايز يكتب على الشات وعايز يبقى برايفت شوية ممكن تبعتوها لنا. اتعمل لايف، ماشي؟ بدأ اللايف. يا ميري، هي هبة هنا؟
I don't see her, but she knows. I'll text her. I'll text her again.
ممكن نبتدي بترنيمة مريم معانا؟ مريم.
No, I'll text her. Don't then give me a chance to text her. She might be just joining, so.
Okay.
Okay, Heba's signing in right now, so she's coming.
Is that
أي
iPhone?
أبونا معانا؟ ما فيش أي أبونا معانا صح؟ أبونا مارك معانا، أبونا مايكل.
What's that? What'd you say, Eveline?
No, any Abuna with us.
I don't think
No.
so.
Yeah, we can start the pray now. We can start the pray until she comes.
Sure,
Is
absolutely.
Heba the iPhone?
It might be.
Mhm.
It might be. She said she was connecting right now, so it could be. But I mean, we can pray. That's a good idea. We can pray and then give her some time just to get settled in.
Okay.
Eveline, do you want to pick somebody to pray for us, or you pray, or either one?
Okay. مرقص معانا؟ مرقص. Okay. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. لما كنا مستحقين أن كل شكر يا أبانا السماوات يتقدس اسمك، يأتي ملكوتك، تكن مشيئتك كما في السماء كذلك على الأرض. أعطينا اليوم واغفر لنا ذنوبنا كما نغفر نحن أيضا المذنبين إلينا، ويدخلنا في تجربة نجينا من الشرير بالمسيح يسوع ربنا، لأن لك الملك والقوة والمجد للأبد باسم الآب والابن والروح القدس آمين. She was us now.
Yeah. Hi, Heba. Can you hear us? You're muted, but hi.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry. My computer is not functioning as should be for some reason.
Don't worry about it.
It happens. So I'm on the phone, but I will try to get this PowerPoint presentation coming up, but we can start. It's all right.
Okay.
I just made you a co-host, so if there's anything that you need to do.
Thank you. Good to see you. All right, should I go for it?
I think so. I think Eveline told, so I think Eveline, you told everyone, if you have any questions, Tina's gonna monitor the chat, so you guys can put questions in the chat as Heba's talking. and then so we'll do like questions and discussion and stuff like that. So go ahead and we'll break it into sections, like we said. So yeah, you can go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I'm actually very happy to be here today. And, you know, Mary was telling me that last week you guys spoke about a lot of the emotions and stuff that kids go through and teens. And I think we deserve to talk about us as well. It doesn't often happen. We usually put people, and especially our kids and our families ahead of us, and we come way, way last. I think it's part of who we are as women. It's like in our DNA to put everyone else before us. So I wanted today to cover some things with you about like just generally the feelings we went through, the different phases since we've been home, just how awkward this is. And please feel free to unmute or chat whenever you want to interrupt. I prefer it if it's interactive. So I'm calling this session Emotional Distress During a Pandemic. And I don't know about you guys, but I've really had so many different emotions. I don't think in my previous 42 years, I've had them in the same 3 months period. Like maybe every decade or so, I'd have one of those big moments, but I went through like a huge array of feelings, right? And I think the biggest thing was that, you know, we as human beings are made of like 3 parts, right? Thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and they're all interconnected. And I feel like we have to break them down into every bit. I'm going to start with like the feelings, because that's like the innate reaction that we all get in any situation. So in terms of feelings, I feel like I passed through like different stages, right? First of all, I was like super disturbed, super confused. What's going on in the world? Why is this happening? I don't understand. Is this going to be serious? Why are people saying, you know, the flu pandemic? What's the flu pandemic? Google searching like crazy, trying to understand what's going to happen. Oh, it's in China. It's okay. Actually, funny story is my daughter, who was in college at the time, was supposedly going to China mid-February. So I was one of like the first people to hear about the pandemic, just because I was following Chinese news to make sure that she's going to be safe. And I remember calling her mid-Jan, way before America picked up on all the drama, right? And telling her, I'm not sending you to China. And she was like so pissed and annoyed, right? She's like, it's my first year. This is my first international trip with college. What are you talking about? I'm like, I think this is gonna be big. I'll be worried. What are you gonna do? And we kept going back and forth, and college actually canceled the trip just a week before it. And I think she would have gone had it not came from the college, just because of, you know, the parental dispute between us. You're an over-worried mom, you're over-exaggerating. And I think by March, when it hit here in Massachusetts, and she came home, all of a sudden, she was like, I'm kind of grateful that you didn't send me. So it kind of came back. But anyway, so that was the confusion, disturbance, worry, all that. Then I think we were in this like blissful mode. My daughter, who went to college, was back home. Andrew was off from school. He's my other son and he's in high school. And I felt like we were in vacation mode. My husband was home, we were home. We had this week of, you know what? I think they're blowing it out of proportion. Media does that all the time. We're just happy. We're enjoying each other. This is awesome. And then homeschooling started. Now that was a whole different ballgame for me. I don't know who was here, who was parenting, who's not, but oh boy, I was so not ready for that. That was like the worst thing for me. Like seriously, like for 2 weeks, Sam would come in at 4. We'd be still doing work. I mean, my son took physics. Why should I be a special ed physics teacher? It's not meant to be that. But I became so angry. Like for 2 weeks straight, I seriously was just an angry person. mad all the time, screaming at the kids all the time. Dare Sam come close to me, and he's my husband, Sam. He just knew. He'd keep away, walk behind me, no questions, not even a question about dinner, nothing. Just when I am ready to be engaged, I would. So that was my angry phase. After vacation mode, I was just like mad, upset. I don't want to handle this. I don't want to do this. And then it dragged. Gosh, I mean, everything shut down, and I thought this would be like a month, 2 months. I mean, look at science. I used to be a physician. I was like, this is gonna really kick in. They're gonna throw at it everything they have. It's gonna be okay. It wasn't, and I felt like time was frozen. I'm a very social person, as I'm sure most of you are, and I think the combination of boredom, being immensely tired all the time, just cleaning after the kids every day, schoolwork in the morning. I swear I've never done this much laundry in my life. I don't know how. They're home. It just doesn't make sense. Dishwasher was working nonstop. We were out of cups most days. It was just like the small things that annoyed me continuously. And then not having any me time at all, like anything. I think then I felt very helpless, and the kind of sadness and feeling like frozen in time and nothing's happening. And then more worry came because of my husband's work, our income. Like it really hit me. And the feeling that I got was such a feeling of, I think, overall grief from hearing about people dying, grief from that this is not going to end, grief from my kids being extremely not okay being home. They're both teenagers. It's not a phase in life where you want to be stuck in your room or have to talk to your mom the entire day. So it was all those array of feelings. And oh my God, it was just 1 month into us being at home. And I remember sitting down sometime in like late March, early April, and being like, I'm not okay. This is not who I am. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do. And I called a very good friend of mine. And we had long conversations that lasted many, many hours. But those conversations I thought was very fruitful. And that's really what I would love to share with you. I think each of us is such a different person, but the part that we were also deprived of church and our social connections with, direct connection with God, it almost felt like I didn't have God close by. It in my head. I mean, not being able to take communion, not being able to attend mass, almost felt like I was more distant to God. And then I love priests and I love the church and I love sermons, but the amount of sermons that talked about how angry God is with the world really were personally, I'm being very honest, I'm sorry for this, I hope you don't get offended, but it was so disturbing. I mean, I am not the person that can acknowledge God being mad at me. It hurts. It hurts to the point where I don't know how to react. And my reaction is what I call going into my hermit crab shell, which is shrinking, going somewhere just dark and by myself. And sometimes that even included not engaging with God as I should. I mean, people said, repent. I'll tell you a hilarious story. Abuna Mark can vouch for it. He's my father of confession. But I called him up, I think it was mid-April. And I asked him to pray for a couple of people that were sick. And then he was like, well, are you going to confess? You haven't confessed for a while. I was like, no, Yabuna, I'm not going to do that at all. And he's like, you mean today? I'm like, no, I'm not going to confess. He's like, why, Heba? You've always confessed. What's wrong? I was like, I don't want to die. You want me to confess so I'm pure of heart and then I would go and die? No, I'm not ready for this. Or I can confess and really hold on to one of my big sins. This way, God is going to have to wait on me a little bit. So at this moment, of course, Abuna laughed, said it didn't work that way. But I realized one of my fears that I haven't even spoken with to my husband or my friend or anyone was, I really was afraid of dying. Like that was such a huge part of my fear. Felt I wasn't ready to die. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to confront the thought of death. And that was like huge for me. I eventually did confess, of course, made 1,000 sins afterwards. So I might be staying a little bit longer, but this is where I was. And these emotions of deprivation, freedom, deprivation of friendship, deprivation of being able to the small pleasures of life. And I'm keeping it real, right? We all love our families. We all love our kids. We all love everyone around us, but being locked up in a house with the same people, no matter how you love them, can be challenging on an hourly basis. Not in life, I didn't love them less, but on an hourly basis, it can get really challenging. And I think this is where most of us found ourselves. Now, it's not a good place to be. And these were feelings, right? I'm a very logical person, very analytical. So as I told you, when I reached out to my friend, we had to sit down and see how these feelings came into thoughts. I think thought number one was, again, the idea that God is mad at me personally was a very hard thought in my head. The fear of death was another one. Me being angry at the kids was another one. Why am I such a bad mom? I mean, seriously, all those people on Instagram putting all those crafts that they did with their kids. No, that's not where we were at home. I mean, on most days, that's not where we were. So all these things just frustrated me even more. And they became into really negative thoughts of, I'm not good. I'm not as good as I thought I was. And I started eating at myself a little bit. Other questions that came to mind is, why am I spiritually not strong enough? And why am I not in peace? Why don't I have this peace that every Christian should have through perils and turmoils? Why am I disturbed? You know, and I didn't have answers to start with. And I honestly, I think I had to come to the fact to acknowledge my weaknesses on so many levels, that it was difficult for me, but it was a very healing process as well. Some of the other thoughts that I have involved food, a lot of food and a lot of clothes not fitting in. So let's just put that as an asterisk somewhere, because I have to mention that. I think most of us would like to think of ourselves as, you know, idealism. We all have this goal within our hearts to be, you know, really good Christians, really good daughters of Christ. We want to be, you know, good devoted mothers and wives. We want to be strong in our faith, and be able to, like, I'm talking to you guys now. I'm supposedly the speaker, right? But I'm more confessing to my weaknesses and the lack of peace, which just shows the contradiction in my personal life, right? That I want to be, and my strives and my struggles are one thing, but the reality is that I am weak in certain things, and there are things that need to be addressed head on. So I came up with this very, very uninclusive, but I thought like good, concise action plan. I knew that this negative self-talk was eating at me, that, you know, there was a lot of harbistan, really, just like a lot of satanic warfare within this turmoil to take away any peace that I might have. Because there are occasions where, you know, you pray and you're peaceful and you're fine, and then you open, God forbid, Fox News or CNN or any other channel, and it just dissipates within a second. Or you have a conversation with someone, like my parents in Egypt, and I find out that someone really got sick and passed away. And these were like constant battles that I still am going through, I think. So this action plan started by me realizing that within all that chaos, right? Within all that disturbance, I needed a routine. I needed to have structure. The lack of structure really was something big. And I knew I wanted a routine, but I also think a flexible routine, quote and unquote, was very important because every day is not like the other. I put in a routine, how I'm gonna wake up. I started waking up just like we were school days. I put a block of time for prayer, a block of time for walking and taking outdoor, just stepping outside the door. Even if you're gonna sit at the porch steps, you're gonna walk down the street, you're gonna work in the garden, whatever you do, you really need to set a block and just be outside physically. I put a block for a new project, whatever it might be. I love gardening personally. So 99 of my personal projects are related to a lot of dirt and my nails not being clean at any given point. But a lot of people I know, my friends were cooking, trying different things. A lot of people did online classes, which I thought was amazing. And we have a block for movies. We love watching different movies. So we set a block for that. And I set reminders on my phone and on all these things. But these are like broad lines, right? These don't address really all the thoughts and feelings that I have. They just help me have basics within my day. So my day would go without too much time of me struggling. The true thing I think that helped me were three things. One was putting boundaries, putting my own boundaries, boundaries to when I would be off social media, boundaries to when I would stop news and hearing the bad news, and boundaries for negative self-talk. And I'll come to the last one. Two are very self-explanatory, right? Limiting news, limiting social media. I am not others. And I think part of my struggle was hearing a lot of others go through things, or the pictures, or the whoever is talking, even my friends that used to call me. I realized I am me, and this is such unique circumstances that I can't imitate in these circumstances. I can't live someone else's life. I can't do it the same pace that they are doing it. I can't go through the same feelings. Some people are just like super positive. Some people hide their feelings. Some people are very energetic. I'm none of those things. I'm just me, and I had to keep it about me and my family. And that was the biggest boundary of all. Eventually, I think the kind, self-compassionate boundaries were the key to a lot of my healing and my sanity. First thing I reminded myself every morning, this is a pandemic. This is not something that happens because I did it or I can control it. This is so unique in history. So I have to say that. Second thing was, I had to write and keep a notebook of gratitude. I don't know if you touched base on that last week or not, but really small notebook. We always eat dinner together. It's on the dining table, and we have to say something positive about the day. We have to, anything positive. It makes us smile. It makes us thankful. It makes us remember the small blessings. And in a way that's not, yeah, I'm grateful, I'm healthy, it really does make you think about it and appreciate it. And on negative days, you have so many pages to flip through that it becomes such a concrete thing in your life. How much God has blessed you, how much He's touched your everyday life, your every hour of struggle. There was something good amidst that. So the gratitude notebook is such a beautiful thing, especially if you have younger kids too. It teaches them as time goes by to remember the good moments And that changes their thought process. As I said, a lot of what we go through is how our mind and our thought processes the feelings that we have. And if our feelings are reminded by the happiness moments and by the grateful moments, then our thoughts reflect that as well. The other thing was giving myself the time when I was sad, when I was confused, when I was angry, to talk openly with God. My conversations were not pretty. They were not censored. They were not out of a book. They were mad and raw and angry and tearful. And sometimes it was just me really asking God, I need to get out of this feeling now. I need that help now. Or I shared my frustration and I needed help to be a more patient person with my kids, or, you know, a more giving person. The last thing was, and understanding that there is no zero-sum game. We as women feel always like super burdened by life, right? There's all those comic strips of the husband getting ready in the morning, you know, no worries, no nothing, and the woman doing 1,001 chores before, you know, her kids even wake up or whatever. But the truth of the matter is we always feel and have that self-pity that we are giving a lot and not taking back. And we feel like we're giving from this pile, right? So I'm giving to the kids, I'm giving to education, I'm giving now to the house, I'm giving feelings to this pandemic. And I feel like I'm deprived, like my pile is going down, down, down until it's zero. Fact is, right? It's not my pile that I'm taking from. And that was a very aha moment. I think it's Hezqiel and Ezekiel, where, you know, God said, go prophesize on this bones in this graveyard, and they will, you know, be covered with flesh and muscles and nerves and veins, and they will stand. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a zombie, God, fine. And he's like, no, 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 it's not, I'm not gonna stop there. You're not just gonna look good on the outside, even though you started off as a pile of bones. I'm gonna make it an army that's gonna stand and fight and perform. I'm like, okay, I'll go through this, God. And then you read the end of the scripture and they win and they triumph and they glorify God. And then it hit me. I was like, yeah, it's not my pile. I am just the bones, but really that pile that we think is ours, that we think we're taking from and is diminishing, was never ours to start with. It was never mine. And this is huge in terms of how we feel every time we push ourselves to give more or we try to give more. I think we rely on us, but if we keep it somewhere here, that it really comes from beyond us, then we'll be able to move on a little bit. Now, all this is well and good, and it's beautiful, right? But there is another side of this. And as I told you, I'm a physician, or used to be, but there is a truth to some of us reaching the point of all these emotions are there and they're not going anywhere. And by not going anywhere, I mean by days and weeks and months now of just waking up in the same loop, in the same moment, in the same feeling, in the same thought is so repetitive and it is so negative, right? That I can't help myself. The taboo that we as a culture and worldwide, and even as in you know, from certain writers in Christianity, I'm not talking necessarily about orthodoxy, of mental illness is sad. And within all the changes that are happening right now in the world, I think just like we admitted all the feelings that we went to, we need to admit to ourselves when we are somewhere that is beyond all that beautiful action plan. I've tried these things, I've done these things, I've said these things to myself, but I'm not there. I experienced my first anxiety attack going to a supermarket during this pandemic. A friend of mine had just passed away, unfortunately, in Egypt because of Corona. It was very sad, very hard. And the same week I had to go buy groceries. I did not think, being the logical person that I am, being the strong person that I am, that I would have an anxiety attack. It didn't even cross my mind, but I sat there in the car for over 25 minutes, shaking, like physically shaking, like my whole body was shaking, unable to leave and go in. And I didn't go in, and I had to go home. And for the next month, Sam was the one buying the groceries because I couldn't get myself to go. And as I told you, right, ended up confessing from a different way when I talked to Abuna that I was really terrified of death. And it was a genuine anxiety, and I had to address that professionally too. Anxiety is excessive worry. It is, agitation inside of me beyond logic. I can't talk myself down anymore. I can't calm my nerves. And it's something that propels, right? I start with just the idea of going to the supermarket, then I find myself almost about to vomit, physically, possibly shaking, not well. I can't sleep. Some people can't sleep the night after, or many nights to follow that. And it's like a panic attack. You can't breathe while you're having genuine anxieties. As I've spoken to many, a lot of people have had anxiety attacks during this pandemic for different reasons, maybe, but a lot of people have. And one anxiety attack might be okay, but if you're having multiple anxiety attacks, and if this is something that's staying with you and has become part of your daily life or weekly life, you really need to address it. And I don't mean address it by self-talk, and I don't mean address it by calling a friend. I mean address it by seeking help, because there are keys and there are science behind what goes on. And it's not sad, it's not shameful. I don't know how many people are attending here. I've just said it. And I think it's very, very important that we get help. My son, who is autistic, had unbelievable anxiety and wouldn't go out of the house for a month. I mean, like, not step outside the balcony. He would not go out for a whole month, 30 days in the building. It was tough. Was not easy. He thought he would, if he breathed the air outside, he'd get it. He thought that I'm risking his life. He was mad at me. I'm just telling you how anxiety is illogical, right? It's not something that I could talk him down from. It's not something that I could tell him, don't be ridiculous, It was genuine. It was a true emotion inside of him. You could see him crunching when we tried to get him out of the house. I did contact his psychologist, and I'm happy to say, just a few sessions, virtual sessions, and he is not only out, he's my Sue Gardner right now. So he helps me, he goes out, and they spoke about mind traps and thought traps and signs that even me as a physician, I had no idea about, but he now knows how to identify the feeling. And if it's too overwhelming, he will give her a call. They will talk about it. Some days are good days, other days are hard days. But is he progressing? Are things getting better with help? Absolutely. I don't see why, as I said, we should act as if we need to go into our hermit crabs and pretend that everything's okay and not seek help. My other big issue is also depression, and I'm gonna name it as it is. I'm not going to call it sorrow. I'm not going to sweet mouth it and call it grief. I'm not going to say sadness. I'm not going to say it is depression. Depression is real. 1 in 10 Americans in general, no matter what their work is, background is, profession, level of education, socioeconomic background, has depression. It's a huge, huge percentage of people. Us not talking about it doesn't take away from the percentage. It's a fact. Why are people depressed? How people get depressed is very important for us to understand. I don't want to stay too long in the details of chemical imbalance in the brain, but it is a very complicated disease. It is a disease that affects neurotransmitters in the brain. This is a fact. It's a studied fact for over 35 years. It's not hypothetical that chemical things change, just like people get diabetes, people can get depression. Another aspect to it is definitely the emotional psychological aspect. So it's not just a chemical imbalance. There is a lot of thought and emotions entrapped into it. As Christians, it does not mean, and I can't say that enough, if I had neon lights to put up behind me, it doesn't mean you're a bad Christian if you get depression. It doesn't mean that you are weak. It doesn't mean that you are sinful. It doesn't mean that the devil is, you are under his control. It doesn't mean any of those. There is not enough emphasis I can say about these things. Is it a spiritual struggle to be depressed? Yes. Our minds, our spirits, and our bodies are one. We are not separate. We don't live 3 parallel lives. I don't live with my body somewhere and then my physical presence, this, and then my spirit does something else. We are one being, and our spiritual struggles are very much related to our bodily struggles. And easiest example I can think of is when St. Paul, right? He had this problem in his back. We're not sure what it is, but he struggled. And he was, at least for me, he was more spiritual than I am, I would assume, but he prayed for it. I don't see him being ashamed, and even it being admitted on paper in the Bible forever. It was a genuine struggle, and there was a spiritual aspect to it because he prayed for it. There is no conflict between being depressed and being a good Christian. There is no conflict. There is no hindrance in being depressed and not reaching your salvation goal, or even being a saint, in my opinion. We have to realize that it is a disease. And people who get high blood pressure, people who get heart disease, go to doctors, it's not shameful. Why is depression any different? I've never heard someone not saying, oh, I'm sorry, I can't go running with you because I have a heart condition. People say that all the time. And I would love that the day come where people can say, I'm sorry, I can't go out right now because I'm battling with depression. It's only fair to us and to everyone else that we see it as a disease needing help, needing specialists, needing medication, and that it's not in any way a stigma on our emotional, spiritual life at all. Depression is a continuous sense of hopelessness. It is when someone can't wake up in the morning and get themselves out of bed. It's persistence of thought. So even if I am getting up and even if I am doing my chores that I should do, it's the lingering thought every hour that I am sad. I can't enjoy what's going on. I can't laugh. I can't love as I used to. A feeling of emptiness, a feeling of loss of purpose, continuous feeling of guilt, continuous feeling of lack of self-worth, to the point where people think, I want to die. the concept that people tell themselves, I'm going to commit suicide, is not common at all in depression. The lingering thought is, I'm okay that I would die because it will be better for everyone else around me. And, you know, for us to understand these thoughts is very important. And to acknowledge it and to seek help. I can't stress it enough. I will stress it over and over and over and drill it today, because these things are real. In my personal life, my grandma had major depression. She was bipolar. As far as I know, she was on medication maybe until 2 years before she passed away. One of my uncles in Egypt has a different kind of depression, and it's called chronic depression. And he as well is on medication. They are the most loving, beautiful, holy people I can name and say about. Their lives were full, and they were there for every step of the way, but they were also able to do that, in my opinion, because they had help, professional help, because they had medication. I recall maybe one small incident when I was younger in medical school, when my uncle stopped his medication. It was a very, very dark time in our lives. And his family suffered, and we were very sad, but luckily he bounced back, he got back on the meds, and he's been okay. There are milder forms of depression, and not every form of sadness is a depression. But if you are unable to decipher the feelings that you're going through, then you need to talk it out with a professional. You need someone else maybe to tell you where you are and make sure that you are okay. I don't know of a professional, a good one at least, that is going to say, oh yes, you're depressed, please take those medications. They don't take these things lightly. They know what it is to suffer genuinely. Like, you're not going to go to, a chest doctor and tell you have pneumonia without an x-ray. They will check you out, they'll talk with you, they'll make sure you're okay. If you are worried about the spiritual aspect of it, I'm sure your father of confession, your spiritual guidance, your friend from church, someone you trust, will tell you what I'm saying, is that it's just another spiritual battle, just like everything else that we battle with. Even the saints battle, even the best of the best. Saint Macarius, all the desert fathers, if you go read their writings, they were under constant battle. Every day they struggled. It doesn't mean we don't love God. It doesn't mean we are bad people. It just is the way. We have to carry the cross and move forward in our spirituality. And many of the times this is, one battle or the other. The last thing I would like to sum is, genuinely, no matter where you are or what you've gone through, whether it's a similar experience to me or not, not a single hair drops without the man upstairs knowing. Not a single hair. And if the faith of Sim'an al-Kharraz took it literally and they moved a mountain, then I will take that message literally. I shed like crazy. I'm like a dog. So every time I do this through my hair and a hair comes out in my hand, I've reminded myself over and over to look up and say the Jesus prayer. I know it sounds funny. It sounds ridiculous, but it just makes me for a second realize how much we are loved, how much we are cared for, how much everything that goes on, no matter our struggles, behind it is a sureness that he wants our salvation. He wants us to be okay. And that reminder is beautiful for each of us to have. You choose your own reminder, but this is mine. I thought I'd share it. Maybe some of you lose hair as much as I do and will find it interesting. I'm done. God bless you all, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you for being so open too. It's really nice.
You know me.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't see any questions in the chat box, but if anyone has any comments or questions, feel free to unmute yourself or send a message through.
If we have a couple of minutes, even if you don't have questions, I'd love genuinely, if you're willing to share, to just tell me how you felt. What's the worst? Let's start with the worst feeling that you've gone through. Like, just this is such a good, healthy, beautiful platform for us to be honest and open up and connect. So if someone wants to do that, it'll be, I think, good for everyone. Just keeping it real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can go. So I'm working from home right now, and I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I think I probably had it today. I've had it more than once, but I was trying to get onto a webinar that wasn't working. My son was screaming my name, "Mommy, look at this, Mommy, look at this, Mommy, look at this." My daughter was saying, "Mommy, I need this, Mommy, I need this, Mommy, I need this." Someone was calling my phone. And at that moment, I just felt like, no, everything has to stop, like, so I just took a moment, I breathed, and I said, okay, this webinar is not working. It's a wash.
Yeah.
And I just did it like one step at a time, because you can't allow yourself to get so overwhelmed like that, because you can't control what's happening. And
Right.
I think a lot of people are in the same boat.
Right. So you practice kind reminders, which I love, right? The kind reminders to self, just this is out of my control. I need to slow it down. I need to do me. And you took it from there, which is beautiful.
Yeah. There is actually a question here in the chat box about depression. It
Sure.
says, does my feeling of wanting to cry all the time mean that I have depression?
I think it depends what you've gone through and the period. So it's not a simple answer as yes. So when I lost my friend, it was very, very sad. I would randomly remember them during the day and tears would shed. It's not an easy situation. But is it happening at other times when I'm not talking about this person, or in the middle of an outing, or do I wake up in the morning and all I feel like I want to cry constantly? No. So it's almost justified, right? There is a reason for the sorrow and you are reacting appropriately, which is really what we all want to do. We want to give ourselves time to feel those feelings. But if this has been going on for weeks and months, and you can't remember the reason behind the sorrow, what one thought is that's making you cry, then yes, I would say this is definitely worthy of you reaching out and talking to a professional. I hope this answers your question.
We have a couple of other questions. So there's one that I think we might be answering in the coming weeks, but it's, how do I control the fighting between my kids throughout the day?
Right. I mean, I won't get too much into that because it's not part of what we're talking about, but I think the easiest thing that I've practiced before when my kids were younger was, one, we wrote down a set of house rules. No kidding. Like, I had a banner put on my fridge that they wrote with their hands, or that I read out loud if they're way younger. Two, they decided what would their, I don't want to say punishment because we called it quiet time rather than timeout, would be. So the quiet time was forced time for them to do. Sometimes it was a chore, like if you are the cause or if you do that, then you're cleaning the dishes this day. Other times the quiet time was literally sitting on, we had this one corner in the house. It's outside of the bedroom because I didn't want them not to sleep at night or feel like they're punished at night. It was not where we sit and eat because I didn't want them to hate food. So it was this special corner, which meant they had to sit down read a book or do something, calm down. I don't believe in punishments per se. I believe in adjustment of behavior and having kids reflect on their behavior. It's hard work, moms. I'm sorry, but for you to be consistent is the hardest part of it. On the long term, if you give it a couple of weeks, you will see a change in behavior. I promise you this. I've done it. I had, as I mentioned, my son is autistic, so he was harder to get to. It does work. This is years of reading, not my science, but other people's, and it's very effective.
So another question is asking, how can I manage my time between my young kids while also giving my own time to rest?
Right. So that's a good question, because this is one of the flexible routine parts that we've said. Having alone time is actually achievable, depending, of course, the age of your kids, because sometimes you physically have to be in the room with, like, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. You can't leave them. But the best time would be movie time. And that's why there was a whole block for movie time. I'm such a believer. It could be Christian cartoons if you want. It can be a good family movie, whatever it is. But when they are on their screens watching a movie, you can easily snatch 45 minutes for yourself. You can be in the room next door with the door open, popcorn in front of them, snacks in front of them, be prepared, and then just go in and do your thing. Again, the other time for me was always after I put them down to bed. I always ensured my kids were in bed early. Sorry, no Egyptian timings. ما فيش حاجة اسمها 3 الصبح. Doesn't happen in our household to this day. Well, maybe my college kid, I'll take that back. But Andrew and I and Sam, we sleep by like 10:30. And then I take at least an hour after my kids are in bed just for me time. So.
Yeah. We have a few more questions if we have time.
Sure. I mean, I'm free if you guys are.
Someone else is asking, how do I manage the problems between myself and my husband? Because he's home for long periods of time, specifically that he's trying to include himself in everything, such as cooking.
Yeah, if he, you know what? I wouldn't mind the cooking part, but it gets really messy. I think that's where people lose their, a little bit of their temper. It's not easy. So I don't want to say words that will sound as if I have the magic wand. It really is a mindset. So as I said, being grateful, again, I don't want to get super into details, but sometimes it takes a big event for you to understand and appreciate the small things. Like my husband was very, very ill, gravely ill a couple of years ago. And passing through that made me never fight about the toilet seat up or the dishes he leaves. Now, do I mention it? Yuck, I do all the time. But do I fight about it? No, I don't. I'm very respectful now. So, I mean, if he's gonna cook, say, who's gonna clean before you start cooking? Let's divide the chores. If he wants to be included, I would think of the stuff you don't want to do and see if he's open for it. Like I make my husband dig the holes and I put the plants in very carefully. So he does the heavy stuff, but we're doing it together. I think a lot of the fights are deeper fights, and those are the ones that really make the smaller, more pleasant moments unpleasant. Meaning if you are both worried about things like finances, if you're both worried about job safety, I would take the time to actually talk about these things. And when you've addressed them, even if they're your own fears and not his, just making him aware of what thoughts are in your head, I think then the everyday to-day life is going to be way more pleasant, and there won't be background stuff that's bothering you. Again, I hope this helps. I can't hear you, Tina.
Sorry about that.
No,
Someone
that's
else is asking, how do I lower my stress level while staying home with my kids?
Oh, I love those things. But all right, so I am a big believer of, before you get to bed, I have to say a short prayer. It has to be a positive prayer. It has to be, it can be a verse. I mean, I've tried different things over the years. It can be just, Ya Rabbi Yasua al-Masih Aini, just Jesus be by my side today. It can be, I'm going to make this day blessed with your help, God. You lead the way, God, I will follow. Whatever it might be, has to be a positive phrase. 2, as Tina said, there are times when you really have to stop yourself, go into a separate room, and literally, physically take 1,700 deep breaths until you're calm, and then go back to the situation, especially if you have little kids. But I mean 1,700 because they say 3, they say 10. For me, it doesn't work. It's like 1,700. But I've learned to remove myself, just be like, I can't do this right now, walk into a different room, calm myself down. Another very helpful thing is music. Anything I'm doing with music in the background, ساعات ممكن تبقى القداس if I'm in a very spiritual mood. Sometimes I have to admit it's pop music and crazy music, but music when I'm working, doing chores, whatever it is, helps me a lot. It just changes, بجد تغيير قناة كده, changes my mood. I'm like in a more accepting mood and it opens me up. So I think these things do help. Some people like scents. So they have certain candles or oils that they use. في حاجات كتيرة قوي, but these are just some of them. Some people like meditation. I'm not good at that, but Salat Yasua helps too a lot. Just Jesus Christ help me, Jesus Christ. It just distracts you from all that and is a very, very powerful prayer.
Thank you. There's one last question here about depression. So it's the person's asking if that feeling of sadness and hopelessness is coming from your environment at work, can that be depression?
It can be. Depression, as I said, is a complex thing, especially if you can't change your work environment. If you're unable to leave for financial reasons or for career reasons, then it's not going to go away. But again, depression is not just all severe medical. As I said, there are degrees of sadness and grief, and there are ways through psychotherapy or cognitive behavioral therapy that will help you deal with these things. So it doesn't mean I'm depressed, it's for life, and it doesn't mean I'm depressed, I have to be on medications forever. It's really a very, very big array, and I don't advise that you try to handle it alone. It's, as I said, I personally have more than once for myself and my son reached out to professionals. It's changed everything. And hopefully it would for you, either making you accept things more, or if it's a short-term thing that needs more interventional, like cognitive behavioral therapy or psychotherapy, then they would, you know, the professional will be able to tell you that. But yes, it can, especially as I said, depression is a constant feeling. It's a repetitive, constant feeling. It's something that doesn't go away. People who are depressed go on vacations and the same feeling is there somewhere. So it's not related to the environment. So if you're only depressed when you're at work, but you go home and you're perfectly normal and there's nothing sad about it, then maybe not, maybe that's something different. But if it carries through in your everyday life and everywhere you go, then I would seek help.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I think those are all the questions I have. Does anyone have any other questions or comments?
Hi, Heba. It's Dina. Hi, guys. I just thank you, Heba. I always learn so much, benefit so much from your talk. So thank you. I even started this as we were at the dinner table and Amelia heard you and she's like, oh, Heba always has great talks. So I wanted to say thank you.
I love her.
But I just also wanted to say just a comment, and I'm not really looking for an answer, but something that at least I'm feeling now is that, as, we're kind of like going through summer, people are starting to see each other more. And it's, for me, like part of a little bit of anxiety or worry is, okay, everyone's kind of going back to normal. Like, what do I do at this point? So I know there's not much that, you probably can't answer that, but that's just something also that, like, I don't know if anyone else is feeling it or what, but it just definitely, like, you just don't know, like,
Right.
there's just so much.
You do you.
As best I can.
No, I mean, don't be afraid to go at your own pace. That's part of the kind reminders that we give ourselves. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the self-compassion, is not looking at others. Remember when I said I limit news, I limit social, media, it really because of things like that. You have to do you, because your feelings, your emotions don't belong to anyone else, and your pace is different than everyone else. So you do you, and I know you'll have the wisdom to, but don't be ashamed to either.
Thank you, Heba.
Yeah, love you, Dina.
I agree with Amelia. Heba gives great talks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heba, so much.
Well, God bless you all. And, we're in this together. So I would love that we also remember each other in prayer, which I'm sure you all do, but remember me as well.
Thank you. I think now we can pray, and is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Can someone take over the prayer? Tina, Mary vows. Tina, someone.
Dear God, thank you for gathering us together, Lord, and help us as we continue to take it day by day and guide us, guide every step that we take, and hear us as we say together, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Say hi to your
Thanks
love.
for having me.
Thank you for coming. It was wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.